Greetings and salutations. You are listening to the Into the North podcast, where we take a look at the competitive side of the Commander format, also known as CEDH. I am Reed, aka Sick Robot, and today I'm joined by Morgan, aka Spleenface.
How's it going, everyone?
And in this episode, we're going to be covering a tier list, question mark? More accurately, tiering the Banlist, aka the new potential Commander power bracket system that Wizards has been discussing. But before we get into that one, what have we been doing since the last episode, Morgan?
We had a grand old time in a little town called Madison, Wisconsin. At
great town.
Cubecon.
Oh yeah. It was a good one. I think this is the first like real big Magic event I've been to that hasn't been like just like a straight up tournament or like a broader Magic Con, and it was a great time.
Wait,
absolutely fantastic.
Sure.
I guess there was technically a tournament, sure, but it's like, yeah, fine, but like, you know, it's not really. You're not really there for the tournament play.
You're there to play with people's. Okay, Cubecon cube providers. You're braver than I am. I held
for some of the inclusions.
Premium card stock. Boy, I would not be handing that out to strangers.
Trusted, yeah. So I mean, Cubecon, all about Cube. Great event. The main event was basically borrowing, like, you could queue up to play other people's cubes, or like the list of approved cubes that were at the event. Every cube there was entirely composed of real actual Magic cards. A lot of those cubes were also vintage cubes, aka powered cubes, with real Lotuses, real Boxen, real Power 9, etc. in them. So yeah, there was to be expected, a very no, I wouldn't say arduous, but comprehensive check-in, check-out process, which is a good idea. I hope everybody got their cards back. I would assume so.
Yeah, let's cheerfully assume.
Hey, they did a good job. I think I would not be worried if I was like lending a cube to Cubecon, and I'm sure they would make somebody whole. If one of the cards did go missing, but it was very well put together anyway. They were basically at the start of every cube, the players in the cube would assemble the packs by counting them out. So there was effectively a full cube count, like at the start of every round, and then you'd have to take pictures of your entire drafted pool, meaning that you would have to make sure that like all the cards were extremely visible in a picture, and then submit that picture so that they would be able to like count out totals and then like identify who had which card. And then before you finished up and put the cards away, you would have to call a judge over, take a picture of your entire pool again, and then check those back in, and the judge would actually put them away. So pretty well put together, I think, pretty well standardized on that front. But yeah, dude. Oh, cubes are so much fun. I just want to play cube more. You would think that it's like a weekend to get all your cubing out of your system and just be like, well, I mean, I guess I burnt out a cube for a bit after that, but no, I just want to play more cube now. It was just a good time. Did you have a favorite?
You know, I really liked the absolute junk cube. It's an Abzan cube.
The Abzan cube.
Had like what I really liked about it is that there were two things. First, it felt extremely well balanced. Like every different person, like every person I played was playing a different archetype and a different archetype than me, and it definitely felt like those games could go either way. And the big thing that I really liked about it was they did an excellent job of playing a whole bunch of cards that aren't just generically powerful, but did fit in multiple archetypes.
Yeah, I feel like those are like those are the two big underpinnings of like good cube design. I feel like where like the cube has to be balanced, like that's just sort of at face value. And then like, yeah, you want like a bunch of cards that you wouldn't normally get to play if it wasn't for having to be forced into playing in this format, but are also like desirable for like multiple decks.
Yeah, like as an example, so I was playing like a green black self mill lands deck, but like, you know, there's lots of stuff that goes in the lands deck, like there's like tireless provisioner and whatever that also goes in. There's like a token food deck, or you know, like there's cards that like do self mill but do something with tokens or counters, because there's like +1/+1 counter deck, and like, so instead of, I find with a lot of cubes, particularly cubes built like by people who maybe aren't as experienced, you sort of get this feeling of like, okay, I'm in these colors and these archetypes, this archetype. There's like, I want to find as many as I can of like the 20 cards in this cube that are for this archetype, or maybe 15. And then I'm just looking for like, you know, let's say it's like, there's 15, I hope to find like 10 to, you know, whatever, a dozen of them. And then I'm just trying to find like 10 generic good cards in my color, and like, that's what my deck is going to look like. And there's a lot of cards that there's very little competition for. And this one, it felt like a bunch of my opponents who were playing completely different archetypes had cards that I was like, dang, I would have liked that one. And like, it wasn't just like, oh, everyone would have liked that one because it's just a really good card. It was like, oh, specifically in my
for
deck
this
and
deck,
your deck.
Yeah, I did not get to play the Abzan Cube, but Abzan Cube looked very fun to me. We had a couple of people play it that weekend, and it was pretty interesting. Honestly, I think my favorite cube might have just been the Turbo Cube. The Turbo Cube was awesome. It was the first cube that I played on the weekend, and the experience was just great. The Turbo Cube is a cube where everything costs 2 less, so spells cast and activated abilities, and that reduces them. Like, everybody starts the game with an emblem that says spells you cast cost 2 less to cast, abilities you activate cost 2 less to activate, and it does not cap out at 1, it caps out at 0. So like the entire cube is like just full of like, you know, like 3 mana cards or things that are like usually like way below rate, but suddenly are like a lot more interesting once they cost way less to cast. And then, like, the premium cards in the cube are just, like, eggs and, like, Prophetic Prism, because they just make mana and draw a card, so they're effectively, like, Black Lotuses that cantrip, which, like, turbocharges the speed of it as well. But, yeah, that cube was very fun, because it was a lot of the stuff that I really loved doing in cubes, which is just, like, assembling Rube Goldberg machines that have like a bunch of pieces that like don't get there on their own, and don't get there even with like one other card, but like need an entire engine built around them to actually like do anything. And that was basically like every deck in that cube, except for like the like mono white Death and Taxes list or whatever.
Also, mad respect to them for making a cube where Soul Ring actually just kind of mid.
Yeah, Soul Ring is actually just a trap in that cube. Like, it's +2 colorless mana, but you're like, yeah, that's sort of like a replaceable effect here. There's actually my favorite
where, like, basically nothing has a colorless mana cost.
Yeah, my favorite card in that entire cube is there's an Oko in the cube, and the cube creator acknowledges in the description for it, it's like, yeah, the Oko is in the cube to demonstrate how bad of a card it is and how different the play environment is from regular Magic, because it's like very consistently the worst card in the entire cube.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say the Oko's in the cube to demonstrate how egregious a design mistake it was, because it's still
it is, because it's still fine.
Like basically not really affected.
No, it's like actually just the worst card in the cube by like a country mile. Okay. Yeah, that one was fun. I think Morgan actually got to watch the end of one of the games that I played, where I killed somebody, or at least I killed people a couple of times, but the big one was on turn 1. I ended up pushing like 11 damage on turn 1 off of Crashing Drawbridge, which is the 2-mana 0/4 wall that taps to give all your creatures haste. So 0-mana 0/4 wall in this format still doesn't have haste, but pairing that with the 3-mana Artificer that makes a Thopter when it ETBs, and all of your artifact creatures have haste. So you like 1 red mana, cast that one, and then cast the drawbridge. The drawbridge has haste, so you can activate that and then give the entire the rest of your board haste. So using that combo to give a bunch of squirrel tokens and large, like, stormy creatures haste to just get in. Very fun.
Yeah, I kind of regret not putting a few more like alternate rule
wacky out there cubes, yeah.
In no, just like ones where there's like specifically alternate rules, because I didn't get to play any of those. Because yeah,
I think those are like
to like reevaluate the draft environment. You know,
those
with new rules
can sort of get funky, I feel like, in terms of selection, because it's sort of like it's like hard to know if they're actually going to be good or not before getting into them. I feel like that's one of the issues. Like, they're like really hard to evaluate, like, the actual playability of the format.
They're definitely I think that's one thing I guess, you know, like to see a little bit. Like, I think I generally had a good time. But I do think there were some cubes that I would not have enjoyed, and I think there were probably some cubes that were a little unbalanced. That like, it is fine in certain parts of the event, and then there are parts of the event where it's very not fine.
Yeah, so the event, for anybody wondering, like, basically completely casual event with just like 4 structured drafts that fire, like 4 structured cube drafts that fire that you can like sign up for, and they fire at like specific times over the course of the weekend. So there were like 2 on the Friday, and then 2 on the Saturday. And then those, for anybody that did like really particularly well at those, they actually cut to top 128 people in the event. Of course, again, still didn't have to do this if you didn't want to, but for anybody that has a bit of a competitive spirit, aka both of us,
how dare you?
They would, they'd cut to top 128 and then cut that to a top 64, and then like ran top 64 and top 8 drafts for crowning the actual champion of Cubecon. I actually forget, I didn't check who it was this year. Let's go do that. But the issues that they so they basically cut down the full list of cubes for selection for the top 128 draft. So there was like, I don't know how many cubes, like probably like around like 100 or something for like actual Cubecon.
I don't think it was quite
maybe a bit less than
many.
that. But there were like a bunch of cubes for just like their regular 4 events, and they sort of trimmed down that list for all the subsequent ones, where the top 128 had like a selection of like probably only like maybe 20% of the initial like size of all the cubes, and then like it got trimmed down even more further on.
Well, I assume they drafted every cube that was on offer in the top 128, so that would have been
probably
8, which is 16 cubes.
16 cubes.
The event had 500 and change people, and they presumably had some like wiggle room on how many cubes they had. So yeah, it was probably like 75-ish cubes, and then 16 for the top.
Yeah, so it was like almost 100 cubes in total, like, showed up to the event or like were draftable at the event. They cut that down to like 16 for the top 128. Unfortunately, some of the top 16 cubes I don't think were particularly well suited to being like, because you get into a top cut, suddenly people get like a lot more serious about what they're doing, and like the way that people draft changes, and like that you're like holding people to more like tournament style plays rather than so the casual stuff that was going on the rest of the day. Like the rest of the day, if timing stuff happened, or like somebody was like, "Oh, can we just like walk this one back so I can do it?" It was like, "Yeah, absolutely, man. Like we're on a casual event, like whatever." There's like, I don't want people making like egregious mistakes like that. Top 128 gets a bit more spiky, and some of the cubes weren't super agreeable with that. Like they're a bit off balance, or like not quite there in terms of like repeat draftability. But yeah, I think on the whole, still totally fine. That's a very fixable issue.
Yeah.
Cool.
It was fun.
Yeah, definitely. I think that one.
recommend.
I'm definitely going to try to turn that one into a yearly event, at least for myself. I think it's well worth the trouble. Even though there are no direct flights from Toronto to Madison, it's so horrific. Madison Airport, unfortunately, only a regional airport, so in order to get there, it's it's a bit of a trek.
It's just like, yeah, it's like the perfect. If Madison was a slightly, like, it would not have to be a lot larger, just a little bit larger, or it was slightly closer.
Yeah,
we might have. I guess maybe not, because it is international, and it wouldn't shock me to learn if Madison just does.
But like, if it was like closer to Milwaukee, you could do like a direct flight to Milwaukee, then like drive over there in like a rented car. But I'm pretty sure it's still like a 2-hour drive away from Milwaukee or whatever. So just like not really worth it.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, good stuff. Would recommend. I expect to see some more listeners there next year. Cool.
Or else.
Yeah. Next up, Morgan, you want to grab this one?
Yeah. So this, as will presumably be apparent from the title, if I remember our naming format, is episode 98. And usually people consider episode 100 to be like something of a milestone. So we are thinking about doing something special or cool. And figured we'd solicit a little bit of input from you guys. So if you want to check out the Discord, and I guess we'll make a channel and just throw suggestions for things we could do to make our 100th official main podcast episode actually, be a little special, be a little noteworthy. Then hit us up. Setting us, just breezing past the fact that we have like 110 actual videos, it's fine.
Yeah.
Don't care about the 100th video. It's episode 100.
Cool. And with that, we move into the main episode. So it's gonna be probably a 2-parter here. Well, not 2 parts, and it will all be contained within this episode. But there are just gonna be like two sections here. Where first of all, we're just gonna talk about sort of the format management changes, because we haven't talked about those yet. Sort of give our quick thoughts and give our thoughts, especially on the sort of categorization system they proposed, or like rough categorization system they proposed for ranking decks in EDH, and then we're actually going to go through the current ban list and see where some of those might fit on their ranking system. I don't actually. It's not ranking. They call it. They also don't technically call them tiers.
In the initial announcement, and that is the most cursed name to call.
No, they call them,
especially because 4 is the best.
They're power brackets, right? I think they're supposed to be called power brackets. Okay, I could be completely wrong. Anyway, I can look this up right now. Yeah, they use tiers twice. They use bracket 9 times. I'll call it brackets. We're gonna call them power brackets anyway.
That's a much better name. I just before we jump into this, I feel like I have to acknowledge 2 things. One, you like tier list episodes. You like ban list episodes. Oh boy. But 2. I think it's worth acknowledging that we were actually too fast with our emergency ban list episode.
Yeah.
Which is probably a first for us. We should have waited.
Our bad.
Here we are.
I guess. But we got to it eventually. We're gonna get to it now. we'll clean it all up. Usually our bi-weekly cadence was a bit too fast for picking. Like we sort of like for a while there we were running out of stuff to talk about in between episodes, and it was just like, wow, there's like really not a lot to comment on here. And then like suddenly we're back and we're like at a monthly cadence, and they're just like, no, there's just too much to talk about every month.
Yeah,
we're at an
eventful
point in Commander's life.
I feel like we've never been particularly good at breaking news.
Correct. Cool. So let's talk WotC takeover. So for anybody not aware, how could you?
If somehow you get your magic news from this podcast.
You missed. The Commander Rules Committee, aka the previous entity managing the Commander format in its totality, including ban list, but also like broad format direction and like communication and like just, talking about, everything involving the format, has been officially dissolved. And reins of the entire Commander format as it stands has been handed over to Wizards of the Coast, the company, the entity that prints Magic cards. Which was a thing that happened. I feel like this is, and for the record, this happened on the tail of death threats being made toward members of the Commander Rules Committee, and I'm pretty sure some of the CAG as well.
It was
but it was pretty
real
widespread.
Bad across the board.
Real bad vitriol. Please leave the community if you send death threats. Just don't. We don't want you as a part of the Into the North community either. Don't listen to. Just stop listening to our podcast, please. If you're somebody who sends death threats, it's unacceptable. Broadly, just know it's incredibly toxic to all online forms of discourse and like any types of communities. It just ruins everything. Because look at what we end up with here, right?
Yeah, and I would say like. Not even, I mean, obviously death threats are, really extreme. And I'm not even just saying threats. Like, I think lots of the people involved here have done, at various times, not even necessarily now, but at various times, things worthy of criticism. And I would just say, like, if you're online, just remember the fact that if you're criticizing a public figure, especially if you're doing it in, like, a more personal way, like with a DM, even if it's not like overly vitriolic, just remember that there's probably 1,000 of you, and anything like remotely negative, getting 1,000 messages like that, it's a lot. So be mindful, be kind, be cool, all that jazz.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is I feel like this is something that has always been floating around in the sort of ethereal realm of possibility for like the future of the Commander format. It's always been something that has sort of been talked about as, again, like a light projection or a possibility. I think a lot of it has been, like, a lot of the conclusions that people have come to on it prior to now have been pretty negative, broadly. I don't think anybody was super enthused about the prospect of WotC taking over the format for a myriad of reasons. I think probably the biggest one is just the sort of lack of trust that WotC has fostered in its own management of formats over the past, call it, decade and a half, something like that. I think there's been a lot of people who have been, maybe disenfranchised is a strong word, but people have not been happy at various points in the past, like, 10 years or so. I mean, over the entire course of Magic history, of course, but over the past 10 years specifically about Wizards' management of its formats. Modern is a particularly bad one, I think. I think there are a lot of people that are, like, not happy about how Modern has been handled. I think Legacy is sort of like an even bigger one in some cases. Less people, I think probably fewer people actually complaining in terms of raw numbers, but probably a larger percentage of the format player base. And I think, like, I mean, just look at Legacy now, like, not exactly a paragon of competitive formats. It might be healthy for all I know. I don't think it is, because did they ban Frog? I don't think they did. Anyway, all that being said, I think people have, like, very real and very valid gripes with the way that Wizards runs their formats, and I think that, like, one of the, in a lot of people's eyes, one of the big positives of EDH was that it was just sort of this static thing that was, like, didn't get touched a whole lot. Wizards didn't have their grubby little hands all over it, aside from printing new product for it, and they could just sort of be left alone to play the thing that they wanted to. And that has sort of gone away in the wake of this. I'm not convinced that it's, like, truly bad. The one thing was that, like, the Commander Rules Committee was always sort of a low bandwidth management committee where like there are only so many people managing such a large format. They really didn't make that many changes, only the ones that at least they thought were necessary. And it was sort of hard to respond to like large scale discontent with any part of the format, and it was sort of like hard to actually, communication was always an issue because there was never really anybody doing the communicating aside from Sheldon. WotC brings with it, a very well-funded team of people who are passionate about managing the format, which means they have a lot more bandwidth to handle a lot of these kinds of things, which is broadly a good thing, but also, comes along with a lot of those concerns that I think are also pretty valid.
So I agree that the concerns are valid. I guess like my thinking on this is like I wasn't exactly happy with how the RC was managing the format. Right? Like,
which is the other side of this. Yeah.
The funny thing is that the best thing they ever did was the thing that precipitated this takeover. But we had a lot of cards that, in my view, were pretty big problems across like a bunch of different play styles and power
wide
levels.
Spectrum of power levels, yeah.
And like nothing was really done, and like I know that at least in part that was like with the passing of Sheldon last year, that made it sort of awkward to like if they come out swinging after that, it looks like he was holding them back, which is not a good, not the look they want to.
And for the record, present. Was not the case at all. I think Sheldon was always in favor of a bit more of an interventionalist like sort of style of managing the format, and I think there were other holdouts. I don't know who they were, but I know that Sheldon was not the limiting factor in a lot of this stuff. But
and I guess like what it just seems to me like now the way it's always been put to me is that it's like dangerous to have WotC control the printing and the banning, because like they can print stuff for money and then just refuse to ban it because they want to sell it and all that. And like that's true, but I also just like, do we have like, I guess we have Leovold is the best counterexample of the RC banning a relatively new card that was still like a chase card from a relatively recent set. But like,
and I think like if you just look at it anyway, like that was already sort of the case with Dual Lotus. Like they just did that, right? Like they printed that card. It should have never been printed, and then the RC just did not touch it for 2 years, 3 years, longer. Oh my god.
4 years? Yeah. Not quite 4 years.
Full
I'm pretty sure Legends was at the end of 2020. So we were coming up on 4 years. Like, and I'm pretty sure they've sold it again in the interim. So like, I just don't really see the RC as having been effective in avoiding the problem people are saying that we're now going to experience with WotC in charge of the format. And maybe I'll save this for a slightly later section. I do have one big hope that, I mean, it's taken a pretty substantial blow, but there's one upside that I think they have an opportunity to go for, even if they won't, that will come up later. But I just hope, I think slightly more active management of the format might actually be a good thing. Like, I mean, we've been relatively vocal about a bunch of toxic cards that it seems broad swaths of the community agree are toxic. And I have some hope that they'll sort of just be a little bit more willing to make changes faster, and take a more active approach. And if they ban something and unban it. Like, I don't think that's a huge deal. I know that like the RC's philosophy was not just Sheldon, but the RC's philosophy was extremely conservative, and I think a lot of that was born out of like a 20-year-old reality where communication, like where Commander was a smaller thing, so it wasn't like on the front page of WotC's website.
It was also like way more like grassroots. Like you're playing this thing that you heard about through a friend who brought it to your local LGS, and like now you guys just play it locally, and then there like sometimes you end up playing it with other people, but like you're not like looking online for a lot of resources necessarily.
Even like 10 years ago, I'm pretty sure I had like the one friend who told me when Sylvan Primordial was banned. Like it wasn't like oh, just I saw it from 7, like with every ban list update, it's like, oh, I go on Discord and 5 different Discords are talking about it, and then I go on Twitter and I go on YouTube and like there's videos everywhere and people are talking about it everywhere whenever there's a change. Like it was actually, particularly before then, like in the 2000s, it was actually kind of difficult to disseminate that information. So if you're changing your ban list like once a quarter, people are just going to be all over the place. But I think we've got a bit more of a robust communication system now, and it's a much larger thing, and people are broadly more aware. So I think banning more often doesn't have the same pitfalls of like, oh, it becomes really hard to manage and people struggle to keep up that it might have 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, also, like, I think there was a degree as well of like, you have to maintain, like you have to maintain. I'm trying to. Does this reveal too much about my other interests? They have to maintain like the mandate of heaven, so to say. In terms of like, you have to maintain community buy-in, right? For a long time, you're a small format, and you know, like if you just go around banning and unbanning stuff all the time, suddenly people like it becomes pretty easy for people to just get tired of all of it and just be like, well, I'm just not gonna pay attention to what you guys are doing anymore. And like we're not really playing EDH, we're playing whatever Dan's general like format or whatever it is. And so like in order to keep some semblance of like an actual format, you have to like just maintain community buy-in, which means that like less of this. And now it's a big established institution, and now that Wizards is running it, it's just like, okay, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. I also think that the RC's philosophy was one built for a time where you know, what has been termed Rule Zero, but just essentially playgroup internal social regulation of the format was a much more realistic thing, because Commander was overwhelmingly played with your personal friends around one of their kitchen tables, as opposed to at your LGS for Friday Night Magic, or at your LGS on their other Commander night, or on Spell Table via one of the many Discords that do this, or at a Magic Fest, or like where you're playing with strangers, and all of these all these things are just a lot harder to regulate, and it's a lot harder to curate the play experience that you want. So a bunch of cards that overwhelmingly people don't want in their play experience are a lot harder. Like when I started playing Commander, I couldn't have played Armageddon because I just wouldn't have had anyone to play with, right? Like my friends would have been like, all right, we're just not doing this.
We're not doing that.
Whereas like now I can just go to my LGS and like make people extremely salty 3 at a time, and have the LGS's like store employees pair me into a new pod of 3 potential victims, and like there's not really anything they can do.
I
to
mean,
be clear, don't do that. But they're not going to. Like,
yeah, exactly.
A store kicking you out is like a big deal.
Yeah. That's like local drama that persists forever. Like you remember the names of the guys that got kicked out of the LGS like 15 years ago when you first started playing Magic. I think there's a lot of potential here. We're still in early phases as well, so I mean we'll see how it bears out. I think we're seeing some positive things and some negative things already, although not super major. The big positive ones are that we're seeing a lot more representation of people being brought in to help advise on this stuff, and I think like some big names that people put a decent amount of trust in terms of like having the best interest of the format in mind and having like realistic views on how people actually play the format. And that includes some CDH players as well. So they, if you're also not aware, Wizards has spun up a format panel, a commander format panel, in the same way they had previously spun up a Pauper format panel. So just a group of people whose like dedicated mission is to handle the health of the format, rather than just having like the Wizards black box, whatever. Like, it's not even competitive play design. It's like competitive, whatever their like format teams are that nobody actually knows who's on them or what decision making processes they actually use. We now have like a list of people who are like not fully responsible, but who are like, you know, their dedicated place at Wizards is to like handle format health. And this includes a bunch of people, including some CDH representatives, including Lewis Stardust, Rebel, and Deco. All great picks, in my opinion. Would trust a lot, like any of them, to have really like good thoughts on a lot of this stuff. And I think they did a pretty good job as well. I'm not going to go through the entire list, but they did a pretty good job as well, getting people from all over the globe too, which is like really a big thing that I think was sort of missing for like previous Commander stuff. I know like CDH Portugal and CDH Brazil specifically have been like big missing voices in the management of the format. And I mean, Deco is a great pick for that one. And then we have like a few other, I know we have like, we have some Australian representatives, UK representatives, I think like various other European and South American representatives from what I remember. But anyway, good stuff. I think they did a good job. That is to say.
So I don't play Pauper. What is a format, assuming it's going to be like the Pauper format panel, what does a format panel do? And like, so my sense is that their level of control will be greater than the CAGs but less than the RCs. Is that accurate, or are they basically just an advisory group?
Yeah, I think it's like realistically they have like I don't really understand like the full depth of the responsibilities of a format panel, but I do know that they have like more power than the CAG, but I don't think that they are the people writing the ban list.
Sure.
But like, for example, the Pauper format panel has been instrumental in like having like pre-bans happen. Like they managed to get a card like banned out of a set before it was even legal. Which like that's a great sign to me.
Cranial plating.
Yeah, the new cranial plating shouldn't have been printed, whatever. But the fact like that's a great sign to me that like a Wizards internal team can just be like, yeah, this card's getting banned before it's even released because we know it's just going to be bad. Like that's a good sign to me, because the issue with Wizards has always been like the issue with Wizards managed formats has always been like, oh, they're just gonna like let the thing just bleed out the format for half a year while they sell packs. And then, like, you know, like, then kill it, and then whatever, it doesn't matter anymore. So just the fact that, like, the previous, like, whatever, quote-unquote, proven format panel has actually been able to get some, like, real effort in. For the record, I've not been following Pauper recently, but from what I know, it's in like a decent place. I could be completely off base here, and it could be that like one land spy is like still just like unreasonable and like not at all a thing that people want to play against. But from what I know, the format has been like gradually improving.
All right. Well, if you are an avid Pauper player, you know who to direct your angry.
Yeah, like always. Yeah. Okay, I'm looking at a format breakdown right now. The 2 highest percentage decks have 12% play rates.
Nice.
For like a large in-person tournament. Okay, great, awesome. That means they're doing at least like a decent job, which means that I have some level of confidence in. If we're not even talking about the panel, which like I do, like I think I have confidence in a lot of the people on the panel. At least the structure of the panel seems to be well proven.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Cool. So you want to get into the actual meat of this one? Yeah.
Yeah, we did promise people a discussion of tiers and bans. So one of the new things that WotC has announced as part of their takeover of the format is a tool they're working on that we're going to call power brackets. They called it. I heard it called tiers first, and I was like, I hate that. So power brackets is let's stick with that. Essentially, they're going to categorize a lot of cards. I assume a lot of cards will just be defaulting into the lowest power unless they prove to be a problem. But they're going to be categorizing cards, and I believe they also said combos by power level. And so what that will mean is it's like a rough guide to use when you are matchmaking at like your LGS or a Magic Con or whatever, where they will sort of correspond to the kind of play experience you are looking to have. Let's quickly run through. They have proposed 4 power brackets with a possible 5th that we'll discuss later. But their low power card examples are Swords to Plowshares and Grave Titan.
As well as, because they don't have it on the graph. We're going off a graphic here. They also added Cultivate to that bracket.
Cultivate, sure.
In text,
Their power level 2 is Fabricate and Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. Power level 3 is Personal Tutor and Draneth Magistrate. Power level 4 is Vampiric Tutor, Armageddon, and Grim Monolith. So, couple thoughts. We haven't seen any proposals of combos and where they will be ranked. Ranking combos is always like a little strange to me. I think there has been like a projection of like the combos could be ranked as pairs. So like you have like multiple cards comprising a combo all contained within a power bracket. So like Thoracle plus Demonic Consultation is like a tier 4, it's like a bracket 4 thing. But if you take out either side of that, I feel like those down. Will probably just be high power level, like point blank. I feel like but like as an example, we're like there are like a bunch of like A plus B like combos that I think that like I don't know. I guess you could do like Kiki Jiki stuff as like probably bracket like 3, where like just Kiki plus Pestamite is probably like a bracket 3 combo, bracket 2 maybe. Or like I guess I was thinking like the like Exquisite Blood and then one of the
that's like a bracket 2 combo, like, right?
Yeah, but like Exquisite Blood on its own essentially just gives all your stuff lifelink.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, which is obviously a very low power thing to do if that's all you're doing with it. But if you're
well, excuse you, it's actually Armadillo Cloak lifelink and then it stacks with itself.
True. So yeah, that's a bit of a weird one for me, and my concern is that it creates a mentality where combos are first of all, it just makes people dislike people playing combos, which I think is unhealthy for a bunch of reasons.
Oh, we could get way into that one.
We're not getting into that. Yeah, but I think like games need to end, and there are decks that struggle to end the games in ways that aren't combos, and there are ways to do healthy combos. Anyways, I also think it can kind of be used as an excuse not to ban Thassa's Oracle, Underworld Breach, like to go like, oh, well, these cards individually aren't a problem. It's only when you put them with the cards that everyone puts them with that they're a problem. So we don't have to do anything. And sort of pretending that like a 2-card combo is this like magical wall of protection against people putting it in their decks, contrary to, I think, pretty comprehensive evidence.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on the basic idea?
Of brackets in general?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like a reasonable take on it. Obviously the alternates that have like been proposed over the course of like Commander history have been stuff like if we're just talking about like alterations to how the ban list works, reinstating banned as Commander was always like an option. I think bracketing ranks pretty heavily above that as like a standalone. I think the other big one was probably going to be pointing, like you would get in the Highlander format. I think bracketing is a lot more intuitive. It's a lot more conducive to like pre-game discussion at like Command Fest and stuff like that than pointing is, albeit much less comprehensive. But I think that the comprehensive part is something that they're probably less worried about for the format at large than for something like a 1-on-1 Highlander format.
Yeah, I think the sort of the issue is that there's like I know what's going to happen. So
yeah,
and the problem is that people are going to treat these like a ban list, and that's not inherently a problem. The problem is that they're going to treat them like a ban list, but not always as a competitive format. So like I actually do think it'll be interesting to do like a bracket 2 and below, quote unquote, CEDH tournament. Like that's a cool idea of, okay, we're just banning like a ton of really powerful cards. What can you still do? What are the powerful options you have here? However, what's going to happen is these are not what a bracket 2 expected play experience is supposed to look like is nothing like what the best deck you can build under bracket 2 restrictions is. Yeah. And when those two interpretations collide, it's gonna be ugly. Like, people will show up to a store's semi-casual, a few packs on the line, but not super serious bracket 2 Saturday Commander quote-unquote tournament with like a heavily tuned, I don't know, Momir Vig combo monstrosity, and make a lot of people really angry by comboing them on turn 4 repeatedly.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's an extension of the previous like separate ban list issue that like we talked to death already, which is just like why don't CDH players make their own ban list? And it's like, well, because if CDH players make their own ban list, then you have CDH and you have top power level EDH, which people are still going to end up playing.
And those people are overwhelmingly going to wind up stomping people who aren't playing top level commanders because they don't have a community of like CEDH players to play with.
To pull them up into, there's no funnel. So that could absolutely be a power bracket issue. I think maybe you can fix it with messaging. Maybe you can fix it with the messaging that LGSs just shouldn't run EDH tournaments. Why are you running EDH events with asymmetric pricing? Riddle me this every LGS on the planet. Why not just hand
unless
out
it's like explicitly a CEDH tournament.
A CEDH tournament, yeah. But like, no, I'm talking like non-CEDH. If you're just running EDH event, like for the record, Wizards stop running what's it called? Stop running the like pickup whatever they're called, they're like the 1 round EDH events at Magic Fests. Yeah, just stop running those.
Or just
it encourages incredibly bad. Yeah, or just
explicitly flatten the prizes rather than, because some of them it's been like a vote, or like you just like award some prizes to someone in the pod, which doesn't have to be the winner, but like just explicitly be like, everyone gets whatever it is, 20 prize tickets for sitting down.
Yeah,
like, and then you know what,
split those up to fives, and then maybe people can just give ticks to the people they thought were actually cool in the game, huh? maybe that's not what, like, an theory they were doing thing. But a lot of pods would just agree to give them to the winner because like it's a whole feels bad thing at the end of like, because it's just
I didn't like you, so I'm not gonna.
Okay, anyway, this is also something that we can get like way too far into. Point being, just like there's messaging issues around all of this, around like just all of EDH broadly, which means that there's also going to be messaging issues around the power bracketing stuff. I think it's mostly solvable with the correct messaging, especially at this point in time. Like, way easier to do it now than it was, again, like we were talking about with banlist stuff 20 years ago. 15 years ago, whatever. But it does have to be, you know, it has to be considered. You can't just like run. If you come out with like a fully fledged power bracketing list of like comprehensive, like we have like 100 cards over the 4 like power brackets for like pretty extensive bracketing, you can do all the work in the world, like all the technical work in the world, and if you don't like actually like tell people how to use it and what to use it for, it's just gonna go downhill immediately.
Okay, wait, I've got it. We just need to run a whole bunch of like bracket end tournaments and get in touch with some of the people on the format panel and be like, okay, so this is broken.
Just go through and stress test each individual bracket.
Which is also extremely missing the point of the brackets. So, you know, just letting that be out there. The last thing they mentioned was a possible tier 5 quote unquote 4C EDH. That makes me a little spooked because I don't know what that means. That could be really bad. It could be them like, what I could see is them treating the tier 5 one like a ban list. Like maybe that's what they mean. Where like they will sort of maintain a CEDH ban list, but they've said they don't want to do
like
that, so I don't know.
That's like an invert power bracketing thing though, right? Because like none of this is actual ban list stuff, it's just like guidelines. So like if they had a tier 5, it would have to be like,
well, if you had a tier 5 that you treated as an explicit ban list, you could say you could unban a ton of stuff.
Oh, sure, and then just move it up to... Okay, in terms of unbanning, yeah, sure. Like, opening up the ban list a bit, fine.
But, so what I was thinking is, when we get into the fun part of the episode, where we bracket the ban list, I suppose, instead of tiering it, I think, for us, tier 5 should be... So, one thing they mentioned is, like, these aren't supposed to be super rigid. You know, like, if Ancient Tomb is, like, a bracket 3 or a bracket 4 card... and you're playing a tomb-themed deck, you know, people should let you play your Ancient Tomb. So, in my mind, tier or bracket 5 should be the cards that you just can't, like, that could be unbanned for CEDH, but you just can't play fairly at lower power levels.
Yeah. Like, you can't expose to the rest of the format at large.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess let's get started then.
All right.
Sound good?
Yeah. Number 1 on the ban list.
Well, Ancestral Recall. Hot take.
Shut up.
Bracket 3. It's bracket 3. It's not bracket 4. It's not actually that bad for the format. If somebody casts Ancestral Recall on turn 1 in Commander, that's... You know what? We weren't going to get into it. I was going to hold this to the end. Ancestral Recall, healthier for the format than Sorin. Absolutely.
That is true.
Are you kidding me?
That is true, but that's...
Like, if somebody goes turn 1 Soul Ring, I'm so much salty. That game is so much more likely to be unhealthy than if somebody just turned 1 Ancestrals. Absolutely. Are you kidding me? Does Ancestral actually produce salt in any of the games?
I'm not yes.
Yeah? More than like a Thalia? I think Thalia is a saltier card than Recall.
Recall is like Partners. There, I said
sure.
it. You just
That's
get
fine.
free extra cards for no fucking reason.
Should the partners be bracketed? I don't think so. Like, I don't know, man.
Yes.
Maybe Timna should be. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, we have acknowledged that free extra cards is a design mistake, right?
Oh, it's absolutely a design mistake. I just don't think that it needs to be bracket 4.
What does it do?
So, it doesn't add much. I'm just going by. Yeah.
It's just like a strict negative to unban it. Like, it doesn't do anything
I agree,
good or fun.
Well, it's iconic is the point, right?
Okay.
If you can't trust the like, too much broad community. No, dude, Recall's busted. I don't know what you want from me. If you can't trust but
I know what you want from me, which is to play Ancestral
broad masses. Fine. You know what? Can't unban. That's okay. But if you were to unban it, it could max out at like 3 or min out, whatever you want to call it. The lowest it could possibly go is 3.
Okay. Sure.
I think we're going along this in terms of like, what sure. Are we going to call out? We didn't discuss this. Are we going to call out like we can never unban these under any circumstances, or where they would go? If
that was my assumption.
Oh, sure. I was thinking like even if you can't unban it, where you would put it.
Okay, my assumption was like
sure
as if we were starting with a blank slate for the ban list with the system they've proposed.
That's fair.
If you want to like note things like Ancestral Recall isn't actually a tier 4, like that's I suppose that's fine.
Okay, cool.
Next up, Balance.
Balance. No. But
this would be a tier 5.
Tier 4.
There's no fun. No, this is a tier 5 card. There is no fun or fair or thematic
reasonable way to play it. Yeah. I mean, there is a thematic way to play Balance. It's just not good or fun for anybody involved. Biorhythm. 2?
I was like, is 2 too aggressive? But yeah.
Right. Like, I don't know, man. Like 2? It's like
looking at this, like Biorhythm is basically just Craterhoof Behemoth, right? So
yeah, like but also like
list,
Biorhythm,
Craterhoof Behemoth in with I put it in with Fabricate and Thalia over Personal Tutor and Dranith Magistrate. So yeah, 2.
I might put Craterhoof at 3 and still put Biorhythm at 2. Like, Biorhythm is just like, it's just the Punisher card for not playing creatures, which you should be punished for anyway. Like, you should be playing creatures. There are downsides to not playing creatures. If all you're doing is board wiping, like, good, die to a Biorhythm. If you're, in fact, having Biorhythm in the format actually discourages the toxic play patterns in the format for them, unless you're doing like truly horrific shit with it by like, you cast a Plague Wind and then Biorhythm, like, yeah, you deserve to be banned from that LGS after doing that. But also, like if somebody's just
how much is play?
Yeah, exactly. But if somebody is just sitting there with Planeswalkers and board wiping every turn until the end of the game. Like, sometimes, deserves that you got because you kept doing that, and then somebody was just like, okay, Manadork Biorhythm. Like, that's fine to me.
The only issue is that, like, it really, if player 1 is just board wiping and playing Planeswalkers, it, like, really blows if your player 4 and player 3 goes Manadork Biorhythm.
But that's fair, but also you get let out of the game, and the Planeswalker player didn't win.
That's like a bracket 2 problem, not a bracket 3
yeah, exactly. Lotus, no. Braids, I feel like that's a bracket 4 kind of thing. Might be bracket 3. No, it's like 4. If Armageddon's 4, then Braids has to be 4.
It has to be bracket 5.
No, it's in 4 for sure. If Armageddon is in 4,
miserable.
Yeah, Armageddon is also a miserable card.
I mean, I think Armageddon should be bracket 5, probably. If they're doing the bracket 5.
That's like more reasonable. I don't know. Yeah. No, I don't know. Because 4 is like high power.
Okay.
Yeah, like Armageddon's fine for high power.
You're sitting... Is it? Okay, to me, the difference between like 4 and 5 isn't whether or not they can be played in... Isn't like the power level they can be appropriately played at.
Yeah.
It's acknowledging that there are certain cards that you shouldn't grant exceptions to for lower tier play, and Braids is absolutely one of those cards.
Yeah,
like, if someone's like, I'm playing a minion deck and I have a Braids in it, it's like, no, get that shit away from here.
Sure. Channel. It's like probably a 5. Like, the format could stand a channel. It's not good, but it could stand a channel on ban.
I think it should just stay banned. If the goal was to slim the ban list, like if it was
down,
like this would be one of the weakest cards that I think should still be on the ban list. Like whatever we come up with when we have our list of cards that can't be unbanned, if Channel is on it, and then it was like, okay, you have to unban 2 of them, Channel's probably going to be one of them. But okay. Chaos Orb,
Chaos Orb, no.
This is a fake. This is just a fake question.
Yeah, fake card. Coalition Victory, 1.
I think this is also a 2.
Yeah, it's probably also
it goes
2.
With Byron.
Yeah. Like, very reasonable. Dockside Extortionist is a weird one, because it's, like, inverse. But I think it's probably 3. Like, we're calling Dranith a 3, which it probably shouldn't be. Like, that's another discussion. Dranith is probably, like, just don't play it. But
my heart says no, but my brain says, yeah, probably 3.
Yeah. Emrakul the Aeon's Torn, that's gonna be like a 4, right? I don't think it's a 5, but I think it's, like, absolutely a 4.
Is it? I think it's a 3.
It's, like, just so far and away the best thing to be casting at the top end of the curve in every deck, though, is the issue.
Is it?
Like, once you get below a certain speed, like, I don't know.
15 mana is a lot.
But the extra turn does uncounterable and then comes with, like, the beady I win the game body. I don't know.
But, like, it's not even... You get the 1 extra turn, you swing with it, and, like, realistically, if you're playing a game that's slow enough that you got to 15 mana and this is, like, a balanced game, sacking 6 permanents is really not gonna be that big a deal for a lot of your opponents.
Yeah.
And it dies to a Wrath, it dies to an O-Ring.
Yeah, but who's playing O-Rings anymore? Alright, we can... I guess we'll leave it at 3. Man.
Wow.
Arayo 5. Right to the...
Is that a 5, not a stay banned?
I think it's a 5. I think, like...
You think Arayo
I don't
could
think
be
Arayo is
for
like...
CEDH only?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I don't think it's great, but, like, you know, it's also, like... It's not the easiest to set up on your own. Unless you have it in the command zone, in which case, like, fine, Mono Blue probably needs the help a bit. It's not fun, but it's not, like,
it really isn't. Also, we do have Boseiju and Odawara now, so that...
Yeah, like...
Does, like...
And, like, touch the Spirit Realm, and, like, you know... You, like, stifle it, too. I don't know. Like, you can stifle the flip trigger.
Can abrupt decay it. Yeah, there's a decent number of tools.
It's a 1/1. It dies to Bowmasters. Like, before it flips.
Unplayable.
Yeah. Falling Start, also a fake card. Fast Bond? Haha, no. No. They tried that one. They tried to pull that wool over the community's eyes. Not happening.
Yeah, I have gotten the sense that everyone I've ever talked to who thinks that Fast Bond might be okay to unban is that they have jammed it into an existing green deck, like generally a pretty mid-rangey one, and gone like, this doesn't seem like that much of a problem, and like not been wheeling turn 1 off of Fast Bond.
We're just playing like a very large value engine in the command zone. Like tatty over with this is like not okay. I know that you can't find it, but like the one game that you do is just like, oh, I win on turn 1. Cool, die. Anyway. Flash also
98 land Tatiova.
Yeah, baby. Gifts? This is like a 2, right? This is like fabricate level.
I think it's a 3. I think the ability to find combos makes it a 3.
I guess it's like the just like intent thing.
Okay, I'm curious. Where do you think intuition falls?
I think honestly, like I think intuition is probably a 2. I don't know. It's like a fun tutor, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think getting 2 cards like just means that the way gifts works tends to be a lot stronger.
Yeah,
like,
and like
people
the fact that you
treat them like they're the same card, but like an intuition pile is
they're
3 cards that do the same thing often, and like that's not how gifts piles work.
Yeah.
Okay, next up we got
Golos. Like you can. You could let Golos back into the format. I think it's a 3.
This feels like a 3.
It feels
because I feel like at that point you're like, if you're in a bracket where Drannith Magistrate is a card you're okay with people playing, it's fine that Golos quashes creativity.
Yeah. Because like you're already playing with like the bad top deck tutors and like decent like stacks that just hits everybody. Like, yeah. Grizzlebrand is like a 5 if it does come off, and I'm not convinced that it does. I don't think it does.
So this is my this is like a fundamental question I have, which is essentially like, how close should Entomb Reanimate be to I win the game?
To win, yeah.
And like, I don't actually think it's unreasonable to say it's actually fine if it just says win the game.
Because you have to put an Entomb in your deck.
I guess like that compares pretty favorably to Oracle Consult.
It compares very favorably to Oracle Consult, actually.
Well, sure, but
like I think if every deck has that, like there are already some Entomb like animate decks that have it with World Gorger, right? Where like that is just a win.
Yeah.
But
notably, those need another creature in the graveyard. Ask me how I know.
Not necessarily. I mean, like, or not Cormella, but whatever the other vampire is. Like, there are commanders that just do outlet all every time.
I guess, yeah.
But like, yeah, I think Grizzlebrand's probably a step too far, especially with Poly stuff too. Like, Poly is a bit awkward right now. Like, maybe not like the most awkward, but like is a bit awkward.
With no Dockside and Mana Crypt, it actually doesn't just say win the game. I'd have to
no, it does. It does if you build the deck toward it, because like you can. The issue is that you get to do life gain in between it. So there just has to be like, there's absolutely got to be stuff.
I guess the problem is it does say win the game. You don't have to. No, never mind. It does say win the game. It just doesn't say win the game that turn.
Sure,
like you just reanimate Grizzlebrand. You draw 14 cards, and then throughout the turn cycle, you draw 7 cards 2 more times to like interact or whatever.
Yeah, and you also get to you get to cash out whenever you want. Like the Adnons, you have to go all at once. The Necro, you have to go all at once. The Grizzlebrand, you get to see 7 cards, decide if you want to cash out. If not, you go for another 7 cards, decide if you want to cash out, etc. Like there's just too much modularity. Hull Breacher's a big fat no, buddy. You're not coming off. We fought hard for that ban.
No, we didn't. But
we actually fought
we
like 0% for that ban. It deserved it.
That was not a
Iona
ban.
Iona's probably a 4, 3, 4, 3, 4.
I think it's a 3. Again, like
I think it's like fine at 3, but
I think
4
it's
is
like
just like super unhealthy.
it exactly in my mind. It's literally the same card as Drannith Magistrate. There, I said it.
Yeah.
From a
it's
format
like,
evaluation
equivalent.
Jeweled Lotus.
Jeweled Lotus
5/.
Either no or 5. Yeah. I would like to say no, but like also if you had to pare down the ban list to maximum, it could come. Like we lived with it for 4 years, just about. Like the format's playable with it in it. It's just like not as good.
I feel
Caracas is a straight no.
Straight no, yeah.
Leovold? It's like, God, you just don't really want to Leovold in the format that bad, but also it could come back at 3, I think.
Some people do. Some people really want to Leovold in the format. I don't understand those people, but they do exist.
Leovold's just sort of miserable, not necessarily because of the command zone. I mean, it is miserable because of the command zone, because Leovold mirrors get, like, real bad for everybody involved. But it also gets not great, because, like, when green is the best, or, like, when the green decks are some of the best decks in the format, which I wouldn't say is necessarily true right now. Maybe it is. Maybe you just consider TNT that good. But it's not great when people are just, like, very consistently tutoring Leovolds into play as their hate piece. Like, that's just not fun. If the first thing that you're reaching for out of your deck, like you're a green toolbox, like stacks deck, whatever, and the first thing that you reach for in the deck is just like, I'm just going to put this Leovold into play with my first creature tutor, like every game. Like, that's just not fun.
No, it sounds like a bad time.
But also, I think it could be like a 4.
No, can you...
Right, like, it's not horrific. Puzzle Box isn't fun, but it's like definitely you can play
five cards aren't necessarily better than 4 cards in my head. They're just
that's
cards
fair. It's just how you play.
You don't want people making exceptions for.
Yeah, no, that's what I was thinking. But like, you know,
I feel like Leo firmly fits in that category.
Yeah, fine. Library of Alexandria, like 3. I don't know, 4 maybe.
Yeah, 4.
3,
but also,
4.
like, please don't. But, like...
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest, a part of this is just that it costs $1,000. Like, that is a factor in me being like... It would be incredibly toxic if this was unbanned. And that does contribute. So, yeah.
Limited resources. No thanks.
No. Just possibly the most no.
Well, no. Lutri next is the most no, because that's the actual literal free roll.
I would rather play against Lutri than limited resources.
That's reasonable, but limited resources doesn't show up every game. Lutri is just like the 9th to 10th card in hand, like every deck.
Sure.
Mana Crypt, no sir, no. Stay banned. You're here next to the Moxen alphabetically because you deserve to stay banned, and these also deserve to stay banned. It's in its people's place right now. Okay, Mana Crypt is like an honorary Mox. It's honorary Mox colorless, whatever you want to call that, and now it's among its people. Nadu could come off at like 4. I don't know. Maybe the gameplay truly. I was thinking, right? Like, maybe the gameplay is that horrific for lower power levels. I didn't get to see too much of it, but like,
I guess Nadu could come off at 3 if you put like Nadu plus a 0 mana targeting ability as 4.
A combo. Yeah,
that would be fine. Possibly it could just come off at 3. Even
I think 4 is probably the safe one though, without anything else.
4 is safer, yeah.
Yeah. Panoptic Mirror, like 2. I don't know, 2? Man. This one just like
it feels like a 2.
You know, like it's like 10 mana to take your first turn with it if that's what you're doing, and then like
I don't think that's why it's banned. I think it's banned because people put less fun stuff under it, like Wrath of God.
Sure.
Like because if you have the mana, Panoptic Mirror turn spell just wins the game. The game's over. It was a 10 mana 2-card combo. There are lots of those. But if you put like a Wrath under it, then you get to play this miserable experience
where you're still like,
Well, no, but it's just a Wrath every turn.
Sure.
Like, that's a gameplay, like, if someone's taking an extra turn every turn, I just concede. The game is over. But, like, in theory, I can win through someone wrathing every turn. It's just gonna be a miserable slog to get there. Or
so,
whatever.
Like, is it a 4? Because, like, I don't know. Because, like, I don't think it is. I think it, like...
No, it's not a 4.
It's
not a 4.
Yeah.
I'm like, I still kind of think it's a 2. Like, I do kind of agree there, but also, that's a weird one. This is a hard one. It's like... It's like a 2 and a 5 at the same time.
I think it depends on how mature the community is at large.
Very immature. I can answer that question very easily.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Paradox Engine.
This is
just
a
give it
tough
to us.
one.
Just bring it all back. I mean, it's definitely at least a 4. Like this one should come off for the health of CDH broadly. But like,
can you get away with
I don't think
it?
it's a 5. Like I think 4 is reasonable. 3, you start to get into like, I don't know. There's some unfun cards that don't produce like particularly the same degree of like monopoly of game actions that Engine does.
This, for me, Paradox Engine, similar to Panoptic Mirror, it's not a 4. It's either a 3 or a 5, and I could be argued for either of those.
I think it is a 4, personally. Primetime. Like
3?
Also a 4? I don't know. I guess 3 like makes some more sense. It's just like not super healthy to have around, but it's definitely like unbannable. I don't know. I guess people are also just doing dumb stuff these days anyway.
Yeah. There's lots of ways to do
Profit Crew Fix. Oh yeah, sorry. The lands. I think the lands have just gotten better as well, which is unfortunate. Like I think the unfortunate issue with Primetime is just that, like, every deck that could ever conceivably play at Primetime now would just throw a Field of the Dead in there. They're just like, yeah, this one's pretty free. We'll just grab one of those and chuck it in the deck for when I draw the Primetime.
I suppose. Profit of Crew Fix. This is another interesting one.
This one also reads as a 4. Like, I don't know. It's got the same issue as Paradox Engine, right? Like, they're pretty equivalent bands.
I feel like this one's even more of a 3 than Paradox Engine.
Than Benjamin?
Where, like, Profit of Crew Fix was, like, an annoying card to play against when you were playing your, like, dirtly Battlecruiser deck. But, like, we're looking at Personal Tutor and Dranith Magistrate. People aren't playing dirtily Battlecruiser decks. There's a lot more expectation of having removal, and, like, or either it gets answered, or the deck is structured in a way that it can actually close out relatively quickly. And I feel like that starts in bracket 3.
Yeah. You convinced me, I think. Recurring Nightmare. Like 2 man? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
I
like,
think,
it's just like... It's just, like, not that big of an issue.
It really isn't.
And, like, if you're killing people with it, fine. But, like...
Yeah, no, I mean, I've said this many times, but, like, just the number... The number of pods where the creatures that you can reanimate with Recurring Nightmare are good enough that it's a problem, but no one has any grave hate or, like, ways to answer it, are, like...
Or, any, like, stifles or anything on the stack to deal with it,
Rocking Horse shit, like... Yeah. Okay. Next up, Fellows.
Like 3? Like, sort of a
3.
similar thing, right? Scheherazade.
This one I could also see. I could also see Raphaelis being like a 2 or 3 or 4 in the command zone.
Sure, yeah. If we had like separate pointing for command zone, yeah for sure.
Scheherazade, fake.
Scheherazade. Yeah.
Fake card.
Nope. Love you, buddy, but no.
No, don't even write down. No, you didn't write down for Falling Star. You didn't write down for.
Fine.
Oh, you did write down for.
Yeah.
Chaos.
I did. Yeah.
Wait, did we?
Big emphatic no.
Did we actually say Black Lotus? Or we just say no and move on. Was that?
Yeah, I specifically remember saying Black Lotus. The words Black Lotus. Sundering Titan. Also, just no. Like this is one where I think you just don't unban it because there's just no upside. Nobody wants Sundering Titan in the format.
I don't know. You know what? Let's throw the Magda players a bone.
It just doesn't need to exist. And it's the worst part about it as well is that the effects are so asymmetrical because you have like 2 monocolored decks of the same color in the same pod, or like, you know, whatever. Like you have just the color distribution just doesn't line up well, and you have just the one guy that gets off scot-free because it's just like, oh, I just happen to share a bunch of mana-based colors with the other 2 players that you're dealing with here, and then like they just get hit for it instead, and it's just like, okay, well, fun. And then it gets blown up, and you're like, well, I now have to do this again, except like one person got left out, so one person gets hit twice as hard as the other 2 players.
I think that's fine.
It's just the play patterns. The play patterns suck.
This to me is a no, right, unless they're doing a tier 5 for CDH. In which case, you can't justify it being banned if you're balancing Commander competitively.
Sure, it's just you just don't need it for CDH. Like nobody's going to play this in CDH aside
Magda
from
players are
like Magda.
Yeah. You know what? I love my Magda bros. You know?
Sway of the Stars. No.
Okay, this is like a weird.
It's more just that like
this is like another like 3/5 for me.
It's like a Karn alt that you just don't want in the format.
Yeah, like from a power level perspective, it's a 3. From a Y, it's a 5.
Yeah, I no, but like it's not even a 5. It's just a no. It's just you don't even want this existent in CDH either, because there's gonna be some big mana blue deck that plays it, and it's just gonna be miserable every time anyway, because they're not gonna be able to win after it. They just have a game reset button.
I guess.
Like I don't think I would even point it. It's just sort of like a fake unban. Silver Primordial, same thing as Primetime, I'd say. Like 3. Maybe the Destruction's too good. Maybe the 4.
Yeah, I think this card's a lot more egregious than Primetime.
It is more egregious than Primetime.
Like also just from a social perspective, I know that this is an interesting. I watched I think it was a Salubrious Snail video about stacks, but basically like I don't agree with it, but there is a perception in the format that taking game actions that don't ultimately change the outcome is still meaningfully participating in the game. And so like even if you're just way far behind because your opponent has now had like 2 primetime triggers and they're just doing some dumb shit over there, like people enjoy a lot more still being able to cast their spells and activate abilities, even if they do ultimately wind up losing to the big dumb green land thing. And like just getting all your lands blown up is is it not a good time.
Yeah, reasonable. Next up, Time Vault. No thanks. Time Walk, also a big fat no. Tinker.
No.
I'm tapping my fingers in front of me.
No.
Like there's an argument, right?
No.
they took the mana crypt out of the format. It's a lot harder to power out. what are you even realistically getting with this one? Bolts and Citadel, that's not the worst thing to cheat to play. Like, that's not like, it doesn't absolutely end the game with a spot.
This is what too much cube does to a motherfucking brain.
Yeah, it's like a no/5. I think as a real discussion, I think like Taker is like just within the range of like if you wanted to if you wanted more finishers in the format for whatever reason that were like sort of in line with what was already here. Tinker is in that range. Like, it doesn't absolutely end the game with a spot, but like 3 mana for Citadel is also like not something that you necessarily want in the format.
I feel like it's just like the flexibility is there's a bunch of other
but like what are you getting with it, I guess, is like in terms of like what you're putting a
possessed portal.
I was about to say though, but like what you're putting the Portal of Phyrexia in your
unbanned Paradox engine.
Okay, that one is a lot more unreasonable. Next up, Tiering Academy, also no.
Yeah, it's a big no.
Trade Secrets, also no.
So I feel like this one merits just like a little bit of discussion.
Sure.
Because like I could see people being like, it seems fine in CEDH because CEDH players, they might tell themselves that CEDH players understand how to play the game and the card wouldn't be egregious.
I was about to say, I was going to rebut.
I'm not saying that's true, but the actual problem is even if CEDH players were responsible, this just becomes a 3-mana in tournament. This becomes a 3-mana sorcery that says draw the game.
Yeah,
because what happens is you pick a player who wants to draw the game, and then they say, "I'll let you draw your deck if the pod doesn't agree to a draw," and then congratulations, you've drawn the game.
Yeah. Just produces draws. Not fun.
And this is in the world where CEDH players are all like rational actors who understand, gameplay patterns and threat assessment.
The implications of their actions.
We're in the magical Christmas land where like people aren't just morons who don't think their opponent will win the game if they let them draw their deck.
Yeah, and then they make them have it and then immediately die.
Still, then it's toxic. Okay. Upheaval.
This might be the most interesting discussion on the list.
This is a 5.
In my opinion.
This is a 5.
I think it is a 5. I think a lot of people would be surprised that you could unban this one, but I think you just could.
It is weird to me that you were so adamant that Sway of the Stars can't come off the list, but you do agree that this one can?
No, because Upheaval, you, like, there's a setup with Upheaval to win the game. Sway the Stars is actually just can't alt set everybody to 7. Like, you shuffle hand, permanents, and graveyards in. And then draw set. Like, Upheaval is like, pick up my board, I still have my entire hand. Like, we're going, I'm just gonna kill you. Or, if not, I get to redeploy at least, dump all my fast mana back into play, or whatever, like, dump all my hand back into play, and then pass, and then, like, you now have to deal with, like, playing through this Ristic Study, or I put, like, a rule of law back down, or whatever. Like, Sway of the Stars has none of that dynamicism, it's just a reset button. Unless you're, like, stacking, like, whatever. You're stacking, like, a deal set to everybody.
All my cards under O-rings, and then casting Sway of the Stars. But this is a 5. You cannot.
Yeah.
You never want anyone to make an exception to let someone play their Upheaval in a lower power environment.
And the last one, finally, on our lists, the Yawgmoth Bargain. The Yawgmoth's Bargain. I don't want it to come off the ban list, but like it could. It's not healthy at all. It's like worse in some ways than Grizzlebrand because if you put a Yawgmoth's Bargain into play and a Grizzlebrand into play, the Yawgmoth's Bargain player wins the game a larger percentage of the time, but it is harder to cheat in.
It's so much harder to cheat in.
Yeah. It's just like also better than Nas though. Like it is the better payoff versus Nas. First of all, harder to counter straight up.
Yeah.
And then also the modularity of like one card at a time is like unreal. Like you have one mana floating when you do this and you hit a top deck teeter. It's like, okay, great. Top deck teeter, put it on top, then draw it with the bargain and keep going. Like if you thought like losing to Necropotence was bad, like Yawgmoth's bargain makes it so much more trivial. You don't even have to find the flash enabler. You just kill people. I would say no, but also like 5 is reasonable if you had to take it off. And it is like one of the less offensive ones in terms of like it's definitely above channel on that list. I'm not sure that it's like bottom 3 on the list of like things that like you need to stay banned, but if you had to select a couple you could take off, but like it's in that range-ish.
Interesting. I feel like it's just so similar to Ad Nauseam that I don't feel particularly worse about having it in the format. Like, it draws a few more cards. Obviously, the modular, or like being able to stop and start is very nice. It is 1 more mana to cast. As much as I am kind of being a hypocrite here, Ad Naus is an instant. I know, now it's an instant. It's not the biggest factor, but it is somewhat. It is a factor. Particularly in a world that is so defined by Ranger Captain, Silence, like these sorts of effects. Where like you can do the plausible deniability thing of like upkeep, silence a scary player, Nas, and you can't really do that with Bargain.
Yeah.
Like I don't think anything really changes. So if you view the ban list as like every slot has a heavy cost and you're trying to keep it as small as possible, I think Bargain comes off before Channel because it's so similar to what you can do.
Yeah, it's just so gross though, because like the issue is that you can play Bargain in like every deck instead of just the Nas deck, so you don't have to build toward being a Bargain deck. You're just like, sometimes I'm just gonna cast a Yawgmoth's Bargain, pass the turn, and then like in the upkeep of the next player, just like draw 20, and then we're just playing that game now.
Yeah, I guess. I'm not pro unbanning it, to be clear.
Yeah. If I had to, it's absolutely 5. I'm not convinced that I would.
Wait, are you saying I can't play this in my normally power level or power bracket 2 Yawgmoth themed deck?
You can, but only if the entirety of the deck references Yawgmoth explicitly.
Damn it, there's not enough cards.
Yeah. Including the lands. Which, actually, that might be the easiest part. There's gotta be a land that, like, has Yawgmoth the flavor text, right?
Probably. There's only 13 cards in Magic that have Yawgmoth in the name. I would have guessed there were a lot more.
Actually, never mind. Just checked. Only 3 lands ever with Yawgmoth in the flavor text. It's Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, Phyrexian Tower, and Contaminated Aquifer. So, yeah, good luck. Anyway. Cool. Well, we got through it. I was expecting us to drag this one out for a lot longer. Our list-centered episodes usually do, but we got through that one in good time, I think.
Well, we do have one last thing to talk about.
Yep.
The thing we absolutely do. The end. The missed opportunity.
Thing we absolutely save for the end.
That WotC had. So we were told as part of this power bracket announcement that Sol Ring is magically power level 0. Everyone gets to play Sol Ring, and that's crazy.
A lie. Yeah, it's a lie. That's like just bald-faced, like lying to the community about what's like actually good for them. Yeah, Sol Ring sucks. Have you ever like if you're listening to this episode and you have like you're like no the Sol Ring should like still be in the format. It's like an iconic part of the format. Just think about the last time that you had a Sol Ring in play or like saw a Sol Ring in play it's like not even turn 1, just like any time before turn like 5, in like a relatively casual game of Commander. Was it a good game? Was that game fun? It might have been for you because you got to take like all of your actions like 3 turns ahead of schedule. But like, was there a net positive amount of fun in that pod?
Honestly, I feel like the best test is think about presumably because I'm guessing a lot of people have played games with precons before. Like even in precon decks, which are pretty unoptimized compared to a lot of casual decks that people have like, actually put some time in, full of a lot of filler. Like the soaring games, just not my idea of a good time. Like having one person just start wildly ahead and like maybe the table can gang up and catch them, but like maybe not. And usually like a lot of the time when the table gangs up to try and catch up, that involves like letting mid to long-term threats from some other players slide. And so like, yeah, maybe someone manages to catch them, but not like everyone manages to catch them and the game stabilizes. Like everyone just beats on the player who's out ahead until the person who like quietly put a strong value engine into play is like, cool, now that everyone's spent all their resources screwing that guy over, I'm just really far ahead. Just not a good time.
Yeah. It's pretty bad.
And it just makes it, I find like it just makes so much of this evaluation just seem like even more arbitrary than it already is.
Yeah, we like we sort of like did all this ranking based on the fact that like we were also point soaring pretty hard or whatever, like like bracket soaring pretty hard. It's just like it sort of undermines the future, or just ban it, but like it also just like undermines like the future of like any bracketing at all, even if it's not a comprehensive effort. And I'm assuming it's not going to be like, I can't imagine they're going to go through and be like, yeah, like each of these brackets is like a 100 card database of things that we're constantly like fiddling with and adjusting, and like I'm not expecting that to be the case here. In whatever form this eventually takes.
I bet the lists will be surprisingly long because like there are a bunch of resources that they're probably just going to go like look at, and like the lists are going to be quote unquote data driven, where like just scroll through the first 100 cards of EDH Rex Salt score thing and like bracket 3, bracket 4, bracket 2, bracket 3, like go to like the commander or the combo database, whatever that thing's called, and like, what are the cards that just combo with fucking everything? All right, let's bracket that shit up. So like I think I think each tier is going to be, or each bracket's probably going to be a decent size. My weird guess is that like 1 of 2 or 3 is going to be smaller than 4.
Yeah, probably.
Because like, what is a card that's too good for low power, but isn't like really good, But we shall see.
Yeah.
And I feel like the WotC takeover was potentially a good time for them to acknowledge that the world where soaring is fine doesn't exist anymore.
Well, yeah, just sort of take the action and be like, nope.
They kind of doubled down, and that's not ideal, in my view.
So, that all being said, being wrapped up, yeah, I think we did a pretty good talk. Hey, we got through everything that we wanted to talk about realistically here. Let us know if you absolutely disagree with any of the stuff that we bracketed in terms of the ban list, or any of our opinions on the broad matters in general. We're not gonna have a gut check for this one, but I might throw up a thread for discussion of some of the bracketing as sort of an informal one. So make sure to check that one out on the Discord. And I think that about wraps it up for this episode. If you guys would like to reach out to us with any questions, comments, or concerns, you can contact us on Twitter at Into the North Pod, via our email at intothenorthpodcast@gmail.com, or on our Discord server, the invite link for which can be found in the description for this episode. An extra special thanks to all of our patrons who help cover the expenses for our show and allow us to work toward improving the quality of the podcast. If you too would like to become a Patreon, we're at patreon.com/Into the North Podcast. Thank you as always to the band Fox Cadre for our lovely podcast music, and to Nate Slover for our equally lovely podcast logo. Next episode will be out in about a month. Till then, see ya.
Have a good one.